David Arquette,
Yes.
who's in both of them, and I didn't realise because it had been a while since I'd seen Ravenous, and I was like, that is amazing that he's in both of them, because clearly he's into Western cannibal horror films, which are not, there's not many of them. Let's put it that way.
I think he is a horror guy just because you got the
Yeah.
Scream, you got the Scream franchise as well, which I'm more of a fan of than you are. I know. And he's in the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well, that kind of thing. So he's got a lot of horror in his CV, and Eight-Legged Freaks, I think, is him as well, if I remember. Yes, yeah.
Yes, it is, because that is a film I should one day talk about as well. That's why I just hate spiders, and decided that would be the movie I would rent at Blockbuster to conquer my fears. Didn't work. Did not work.
There's one where they're giant and everywhere.
Yeah, I just thought, how they say, like, if you confront your fears face on, you kind of get over them. Turns out watching Eight-Legged Freaks does not do that. All it does is give you more of a complex about an apocalypse with giant spiders. So, yeah, wasn't a good idea. I don't recommend it.
I'd maybe go for one of the Harry Potter films where the spiders in the woods are, like, friendly. Kind of. Semi-friendly, at least. Not, well, they still try and kill the kids. Maybe not. I can't think of any, like, friendly spider films beyond Charlotte's Web. So...
Yeah, I don't think they exist. No. I don't think
spiders for a good reason. Friendly. Spiders are evil. Yeah. Well, David Arquette he's barely in this film. He's in it, and I love the time that he's in. But there's so many production issues that Ravenous went through. I don't know if you looked into the making of it much, but
yeah. You've got switching of directors.
3 directors as well.
Moaning. Yeah, 3 directors. Producer was moaning. The conditions were bad. It seems like no one was particularly happy doing this one.
They started out with a Yugoslavian director called Milcho Manchevski, who I haven't seen anything he directed. But like Before the Rain, Dust, Shadows, Mothers, Bikini Moon, and a 2019 film called Willow. That's not the Willow everyone knows. But he was the initial director. Lots of complaints between him and the writing and the production department. He was eventually removed from production and replaced with one of the producers, Laura Ziskin. And she was disliked, so Robert Carlyle brought in. Oh no, so it was Raja Gosnell was the producer who was brought in, and then Robert Carlyle came in and was like, I've got this friend of mine, Antonia Bird. She directed me on stage. She'll do it. And with 10 days notice, she took over this film. I don't know how much original footage was put into it or not, or if everything shot was her. But yeah, it was being written and rewritten on the fly by Ted Griffin, the screenwriter. So I think David Arquette's character suffers from that a little bit. Because he like disappears from the film early on to go on a mission to town, then he comes back, and then when he does come back, he's dead almost immediately after one dream sequence killing. Which is a shame, because he's like a fun little character. All the guys at the outpost are not great at their job. They're all characters in some way or other, and he's the drug guy. He's addled on peyote and stuff. So knowing what David Arquette can do, I felt like he could have done more with that character, but he just didn't really get the chance.
Yeah, he's pretty underutilized in this film, but to be fair, and maybe it is because of the production issues, and as you just mentioned, 3 directors. I mean, rewriting it here, there, and everywhere. I do feel like there's a lot of characters in this film that probably could have been developed and built out and probably played far more like key parts to the film. But I think that's in a way, I think it kind of works for the film that we end up just focusing on Guy Pearce and Robert Carlyle's characters, because really it is they're the ones that we're focused on, and I think they're both very, very good in this film.
Agreed. Yeah. Guy Pearce is kind of underplaying his role a little bit, but because he's against Robert Carlyle, and there's no win in that. It's Robert Carlyle's film. He gets to play he plays basically 3 different characters, because when he arrives on the scene, he's this terrified, feral guy who's been out in the woods for 3 months, barely alive, and then they recover him and he becomes a bit more with it. And then once once we reach the halfway point, he becomes just a maniac. And I love everything he does. But in the supporting cast, Neil McDonough is a guy who I really like in lots of things. Band of Brothers is what I know him from best. But we're introduced to him. There's like a montage. Once Guy Pearce arrives at the base, he meets Jeffrey Jones, who we'll not be going into because Jeffrey Jones is a horrible person. Terrible character in real life. Skipping over that. Look into that yourselves, listeners, if you want to, but I recommend that you don't. Bad guy. So he introduces, there's a montage of all the other guys at the recruit, and it's a little clip of Private Toffler, Jeremy Davies. He's like the richest guy. He's putting up a cross. He's a bit meek, a bit timid. Major Knox, Stephen Spinella is a drunk doctor, and then Private Cleaves, Dave Arquette. He's druggy guy. When he threw out the doctor, he's like, "Don't get sick. He's the doctor, but don't do that." And then they say, and then there's Private Reich, Neil McDonough. He's the soldier. And we're introduced to him naked in the river screaming. That's just a quick little shot of Neil McDonough just topless in a river, just screaming, and that's all we see. I'm like, I'm in. This guy. I like this guy. This is my character. We get everything we need to know about him. Just, it's clearly cold. There's snow everywhere. He's just gone for an ice bath to scream at the river. Wonderful.
Why not?
Why not, indeed. And there are the 2 Native Americans, George and Martha, Joseph Running Fox and Sheila Talsey. They don't get a lot to do, which is a shame. They're just kind of there. George goes with them on their little mission. Martha goes with David Arquette into town. It's a shame they didn't do more with them, but they didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would have. I think out of all of the, kind of the supporting cast, I think it would have been nice to have seen those 2 have more prominence in the film, especially seeing as the rest of the cast is all, white men. However, I guess for the time, it does make sense. But yeah, I think that was a bit of a blind spot that they didn't really pick up on. But again, probably because they were rewriting the film as they were going through it.
Yeah. And this is the last film of John Spencer as well, from The West Wing, who plays General Slauson, the guy who sends Guy Pearce there. I love John Spencer. I didn't recognise him to start with because he's got all this facial hair on him, as does most of the cast actually. But he's always great in everything, and I just like that he's here, making it just a bit better. All these people are all, whenever they crop up in a film, like, this is going to be a good film because I've got these guys here. Yeah. They're all film improving actors, and they do that. But yeah, this is the Robert Carlyle show, and as soon as he arrived, I was like, great, here we go. So let's go through the plot a little bit. So Guy Pearce arrives at this Fort Spencer. Sometime after he arrives, they send off David Arquette and Martha to go and get supplies. Then Guy Pearce arrives as Calhoun with a story of that he was out on a trek across they're going on a trek across somewhere, and they're going to do a shortcut. Shortcut didn't work. The Sierra Nevada is where they were going. And they end up having to hide up in a cave. It was a party of 6. They ate the horses. They ate the dog. They ate their shoes. And then one of the guys died from malnutrition, and so they ate him. And then they started killing off each other and eating them. And he ran away, leaving the colonel and his wife. Or so he says. And so he arrives at this base, and he's naked. He's freezing. And so they bathe him, they wash him, they bring him back to life, and he tells his story. And they're like, okay, well, Jeffrey Jones is Colonel Hart, who, when they're going through all the deficiencies of why everyone's at this backwater post, his seems to be he likes to read in different languages. That's what's wrong with him. This guy, he reads books. Ugh.
Can't have that. No.
Not in the army. Hell no.
No, absolutely not.
So he decides they have to go out and find and see if Colonel Ives and his wife are alive, so it's their job. And actually, clearly there is nothing else to do there, because they all sit down to dinner, and he asks everyone, like, so did anyone do anything today? Silence. There is nothing to do here other than get naked and scream at the river, it seems, or get drunk, or get high. So they set off. They leave the doctor behind, which they're going to try and find people who might be ill or malnourished and something. And they leave the doctor behind, but fine, he's drunk. And head out on their way. And they get there, but whilst they're on their way, George is concerned that Calhoun might be a Wendigo. he's onto something. And one of my favourite scenes, Jeffrey Davies, Private Toffler, he finds some bones somewhere, falls off a cliff, and gets injured. So they bandage him up, and during the night he wakes up because Robert Carlyle is licking his wound. And so
and I love it. He's got like I think his excuse is like, I was dreaming and, just woke up licking him.
And
he
doesn't deny it. It's great.
Yeah, and it seems like everyone else goes, yeah, that seems fair enough. Like, that's the kind of thing you do when you're dreaming. You just start licking a man.
I enjoyed Jeremy Davies' performance of just screaming things, because whilst he's being bandaged, he's like, "Bourbon now!" And then when he wakes up, he was licking me. He's just screaming these things. His performance is either like really timid and quiet and shy, or just screaming. I like Jeremy Davies, but he's never
for him.
Yeah, he's never been a subtle performer, I would say. But I always enjoy the performances he gives. He's an interesting actor. So Robert Carlyle, he had blood on his lips, I guess, so he couldn't really deny. I wasn't licking him. His blood is it's wine. No, it's so he gets tied up because he insists on being tied up, and then by Neil McDonough, and then they get to the cave, and Neil McDonough and Guy Pearce go in to investigate the cave, and they go in, and there's a tunnel leading straight down, so Neil McDonough goes down there, and he finds there's more bodies than there should be, and so he realises that Robert Carlyle has been lying, and so he comes out. Meanwhile, out on the outside of the cave, Robert Carlyle going nuts, going full freaking everybody out, hands waving around everywhere, digging in the ground. They've let go of his rope. He finds a knife and he just kills them all. Kills everyone. All the characters we've met so far, kills them. So
I do love how it goes from, like, it's quite soon into the movie that it goes from, quite chill to just Robert Carlyle losing it immediately. Yeah. It's like, we've barely known him 5 minutes and he's like, yeah, I'm going to kill everyone.
Well, the film is only like 100 minutes long. Yeah. And it could easily be 2 films or double that. Like, there's so much happens in this, and it's always surprising. It's always like, wait, what? Hang on a minute. But go back and just, what did I just see? Because it's great. I haven't said this. I really enjoyed this film. I liked it a lot. I don't want things to get any more cannibalistic than this film gets. This is kind of my cannibalistic peak or limit, I would say. So we've kind of, in the Venn diagrams of your films and my films, this sits nicely in the middle, I would say.
Yeah. This is even for me, like, this is a nice spot of cannibalism. You go further than that, and you get into the I might be scarred for life kind of category, which I don't like to recommend those ones to people.
Good, yes. I'm glad when I asked you if you want to talk about Ravenous, you didn't come back and say, well, what about a Serbian film? I would have said, well, maybe not. No, thank you.
There could have been, there's a 2006 German film called Cannibal, funnily enough, which, I even watched that and went, oh, I mean, it's based on a very true story, and it is, 90 minutes of just pure cannibalism. And even for me, I went, it's not really my kind of vibe, as much as I do love a cannibal, maybe not that. So
you need some context to it.
Ravenous was a good pick.
Good. I'm glad to hear. So in the scuffle outside, Robert Carlyle, he stabs Jeffrey Jones. He then uses him as a human shield to take an axe